Welcome to Just Picture It. I'm Mayland Fung. Tonight our guests will be Valerie and Penny from Samuel Merritt University in Oakland, California. It's a 102-year-old institution that has been educating health professionals for the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. Valerie Landau is the Director of Student Assessment for Student Learning, and Penny Bamford, PhD, is the Assistant Vice President for Academic Affairs. The question they are addressing is how learning outcomes are relevant to students, faculty, accreditors, employers, and the community. They have found a way to generate dialogue and improvement in this important area of health education by bringing in design, color, and music. Welcome.
Thank you.
Penny, tell us a little bit about Samuel Merritt.
Samuel Merritt is a health sciences institution who's training different disciplines in healthcare, whether it be nursing, podiatric medicine, or podiatry. And a lot of what we're trying to focus on right now are areas that are very important: aging, diversity, and chronic disease.
Well, thank you. I think we have a little sketch of a video rolling of Samuel Merritt. Let's turn to that.
I'm a big runner, and so being a specialist in the foot, I think is very cool. The way clinic works is you get thrown into a room with a patient, work up the patient, you find out why they're there, you do a physical exam, make sure they have proper blood flow to their feet, their nerves are working correctly, check their muscles, everything like that. And then you take all this information that you get and you go and you present it to your attending physician.
What is very special about this particular center is that we have what we call 2 simulation suites, and we have the capability of creating all kinds of clinical environments using mannequins. So we use a lot of mannequin-based simulation. These mannequins are controlled by very sophisticated computer software, so that again we can create a realistic human being in just about any clinical situation that any of our students would find.
It's really great because even though it's not really real patient, but we do IV, we do injections, we do a lot of stuff.
This is a sophisticated 102-year-old university. The simulation is astounding.
We are very proud of it. We're nationally known for our simulation, and it's a way for us to be able to have students practice in a very high-tech environment, which they are doing in hospitals right now. And we also can practice the more compassionate skills, and the students can actually practice all of that within the simulation lab.
It's so interesting to me that you're actually using technology to help the students be able to think about the patient.
It's true. We can simulate anything. Students that are uncomfortable speaking with physicians or uncomfortable speaking with the patients can practice that in the simulation lab and walk away from that feeling much more confident and able to work with the patient a lot better in a hospital or clinic situation.
Oh, that's wonderful. So then how do you actually start to assess whether they're learning the things you want them to learn?
That's been a very interesting process for us. We've been testing students for a long time with different modalities, multiple choice, OSCE exams where they're actually working with a standardized patient, which is the standardized patient is an actor, and they're acting a particular disease or disorder.
An actor?
An actor, really.
Oh, interesting.
And the student gets to assess that client and try to determine through their process what's going on. So the assessment can take on many different forms, but still we wonder, how do we really know? How do we really know what our students know? So we came up with looking at it through the basis of competencies and measurable objectives. Where we can...
Just for our audience,
yes.
Competencies, I mean, that probably means a lot more to you than
yes,
us.
I'm sure
so
it does.
tell us about what objectives, competencies, how does that make sense to me as a patient? How does that help a professional look after me better?
Okay, let's use communication.
Yes.
as a competency. That's something that we think is very important,
Yeah.
that our students are going to be able to communicate with our patients. That would be the competency, and an objective would be that the student is able to assess direct and indirect communication. Like, I could say that, no, I'm not having pain, yet be in a position that's demonstrating excruciating pain. Or just the opposite. I could say, I'm so sad, and why would I be smiling? So there's different cues that the patient expresses that the student can assess and pick up on.
So I think you're touching on a very important point, that assessment can really direct the state of health in a way, that how we train our young professionals truly impacts the delivery of care. And so really you're impacting the delivery of care by the way you assess and what you choose to assess.
Right, right. That's a very profound statement, actually, because Valerie and I have begun to think that the tools actually make the rules when it comes to assessment.
Yes.
That the way you construct a tool or the way you construct the assessment modality in such a way sort of directs the way that you learn, which is a bit backwards from the way that we may have done it before, where the tool shows, which we'll be able to do, the actual content.
Oh, okay. So I know that earlier on Valerie and I were talking, and she has a kind of different kind of background. She's been a pioneer in technology. She's been looking at new ways of doing education. So Valerie, what are you bringing to this kind of tricky problem of curriculum assessment?
Well, I think one of the things that I bring to this is having worked in the field of collective intelligence and really having worked with the idea of visual maps and visual thinking, I was able to, and as well as having a formal background and training in technology and education, I was able to really look at how can we visualize the big picture, the institutional values, so things such as compassion, ethics, and map that with then the more specific goals of each particular academic program, and then right down to the course level where you get into the very detailed course learning outcomes. So
Now, that's a lot of stuff. Don't people get mixed up? I mean, how do you keep track of all of that stuff? How does a faculty member keep track? How does a university keep track on whether all the pieces are hanging together?
So this has been traditionally a big problem, and you've seen a lot of other universities getting in big trouble for not being able to track this very well, because it's very difficult. So one of the things we did was we decided that we could use the ideas of graphical representation and showing relationships of many to many using color, shape, size, proximity, and really take advantage of the interactive capabilities of technology to show the big picture, and then click down. In 1 or 2 clicks you can get down to the very detailed level and see our stated outcomes compared to evidence of what we're actually doing. And so it's very exciting.
Let's talk about the evidence. What would you consider evidence for curriculum being on the right track? How do you look at that as a academic vice president in a university?
How it's important to me is a way to measure that students are learning what they say.
What they should learn.
What they should learn,
Yeah.
exactly. So we have, as Valerie said, these course objectives, which are just sentences that say a very specific thing. The student will understand how to take a blood pressure.
Yeah.
And that would be an objective.
Yes.
Then the evidence would be, oh dear.
Keep going. Yeah. What was the evidence?
The evidence would be that the student could put the blood pressure cuff on and actually watch the mercury go up, or actually watch the digital, which we have now, and determine the right blood pressure. That would be an example of the evidence.
Okay.
So we can show that. We can show that by the student actually demonstrating it on a patient, or we can actually do that with an examination. So that's the different ways to approach the evidence.
So I'm actually imagining here that the evidence could be video of those simulations, video of people actually operate. So that goes into the system. So I'm wondering, you know, this earlier picture we saw of the podiatrist student. He was handling the African-American lady's foot with such compassion that I could imagine that, well, that's evidence of compassion, you know. And so the fact that you actually have a system that can use this latest technology and go all the way down to show that, yes, this person is demonstrating compassion. It's marvelous.
It is.
Right.
It really makes a big difference, because not only can we demonstrate things like compassion through videos, through the other kinds of evidence, for instance, their PowerPoints, their written papers, their research documents, also can demonstrate compassion.
So let's take a look at how you do this.
Okay, so what we did was, you can see these small little dots at the top are little patches of color. And each of the colors represents one of the core institutional learning outcomes. So we have, and then each of these blocks here, these kind of color bars, each one of these color bars represents a academic program learning outcome. So these are a little bit lofty statements, for instance, addressing issues like respect and analysis and research and other kind of broad issues. And each of these little dots down here, which are very small on the screen but legible, represent the course learning outcomes. So this course learning outcome, so what we see here is, all in this program learning outcome, this only maps to one color, which is a kind of red-pink, which correlates with leadership.
Okay.
And so this program learning outcome deals with leadership. Down here you see this course learning outcome, only the blue is selected, maps to clinically competent.
So then how do you actually go down to see the evidence that leadership is being covered in that course?
I can click on this course learning outcome, and I can read here the text of the program learning outcome, the text of the course learning outcome, and I can actually click on the evidence. And in this case, this is a research poster presentation that a student made that they actually presented at a national conference.
Wow, I'm starting to see the future of education here. I mean, this is like almost the holy grail of education, where a student comes out of a course and they say, I know, I've learned leadership, I've learned compassion, I have learned this, and then people can say, well, show me, and you can go all the way down and see the poster.
That's correct. And so it's creating a portfolio of the students' learning, but what's unique about this is, rather than that portfolio being either at the course level, which is very specific, but it also incorporates the program level and the institutional level, so that you can see all three things demonstrated in one single screen.
So let's break that apart. When you say at the institutional level, earlier on, Penny, you were talking about institutional values and competencies like compassion, leadership. So I'm imagining there's a way for you to look at all your courses and see how much compassion is being taught.
Yes.
Or not taught.
Exactly.
So tell me what happens when you look at a course and there's no compassion being taught. What happens? What's the discussion that goes on?
Well, we talk about that, and we first of all, we say, well, maybe if this course is about physical diagnosis in some way, the compassion, if it doesn't appear in that course, that's okay. So we kind of unwrap the exact content around it to determine, oh dear, do we not have enough information about leadership in the curriculum, or is it okay in this particular course that we're not focusing on that? So it really drives the faculty to look at the material that's being covered, and are we covering all of the institutional objectives or values that we think are important? Not necessarily in every course, but in the entire program.
Wow.
So the conversations are about, are we covering that content?
So let's take a look at how we might actually have that discussion with a faculty member. What would you look at in this curriculum assessment?
I would want to look at the blue colors that you're seeing on your screen,
Yeah.
which talk to clinical competence and communication. And I would want to make sure that in health science, a large percentage of the content covers that area. You want a good clinician to take care of you.
Yes.
You also want someone who can be compassionate, someone who can demonstrate ethical behavior, someone who has an idea of information technology and informatics. So you can look at that, and you would see those colors not as densely. The information technology would be that little orange dot that you're looking at the screen. Valerie's pointing to it for us. That color doesn't appear very much there. So we can say, yes, we talk about information technology in that department, but not a lot. But look for the greens and the blues, and they're there in number. So it gives you an idea of the percentage, if you will, of curriculum that's about a particular broad objective.
So let's now shift to what this means for education and for health. Let's put down the demo.
Okay.
We can put down that thing and connect as people. So you've got a way to show a huge amount of information with colors and pictures in such a way that you can have intelligent discussions about topics that have been difficult to talk about in the past with your faculty. What kind of difference has that made? How long has Valerie been doing this, and what has happened in Samuel Merritt as a result?
You've been doing this with us for about 2 years. We started the process for an accreditation process we were going through. And what became apparent to us in the very beginning was we didn't have a system. We didn't have a really valid system to look at how are we measuring this. So we started there in terms of building what we call a culture of assessment. We realized quickly we didn't have the tools that we needed. We were being asked questions by accreditors that we didn't have the evidence for. So we started with trying to figure out, how are we going to do this? We want to really be able to see it, and we want to be able to see many data points on one screen so that we have the entire picture as well as the individual small picture. And that's how we started with that. So we grew from not really having any assessment other than, I don't want to have you think we weren't assessing our students at all. We were through the traditional methods,
yeah.
But we couldn't really demonstrate that. We could take you to a grade book. We could take you into a room and show you paper evidence. Now we have a way that we can do that much more holistically, from the very big picture down to the minute detail.
So in a way, this curriculum instrument and tool was developed in order to satisfy the questions of accreditors. But what you found is, because of the visual nature of this, because people could picture it, it became much more real. These questions of the accreditors led to the tool, but then you are able to use it to improve education right there in the classroom.
Yes.
And you can start to have discussions with faculty. Tell me about these discussions with faculty. Were they surprised when they saw these pictures?
I think they were surprised when they saw these pictures, and I think that it's led to a lot of discussion, the kinds of discussion that they were not having before. One of the academic program chairs described it as a dipstick, where you can just quickly look at the picture and you get an idea of, are we doing well? Do we need a tune-up, or do we need an engine overhaul? and so then you know, the tool in itself does not fix the problem, but it certainly identifies it, and it makes it so that it shines a light so that all people are looking at the same problem in the same way.
So let's back up. These accreditors, they're going around and asking all the health professional training institutions these same questions. Are they responding the same way as you, or what are they doing? How does what you're doing compare with other universities?
I think we have something very unique, which is very exciting. And again, it's because of all of the data points that you can see at one time. The other thing that this does is it really lets us see authentic student material, to really be able to say, this is authentic material that the student actually did, and we can say that this is the evidence, the authentic evidence that meets the goals.
We're getting a lot of enthusiasm from other schools who have partner schools who have seen this work, and we're getting a lot of enthusiasm about this because I think everybody is moving in this direction. So there's a lot of excitement, and one of the things that sort of the unintended consequences is that also faculty are using this as a way to share their assignments. They're able to see what other faculty are doing. And so it's opening up a whole new way of approaching teaching and learning. And I think our next step is to roll it out to students and have students have their own portfolio.
Oh, that's an exciting, I'm sure they could use this to transform Samuel Merritt yet again. I think the two of you are doing some amazing stuff. And really, the courage of Penny to take a out of left field thinker like Valerie and apply it to a problem and come up with this kind of solution. It's wonderful. Where do you see this going next? I mean, what's the future for this? And I could imagine it's beginning to transform health education as a whole.
I think it can, because the beauty of it is you can place any information that you want. I mean, there's standardization that we all have to pay attention to, and accreditation standards that we have to meet. But it allows universities to express their own uniqueness.
And I see a uniqueness in Samuel Merritt, which is I think there's a national requirement for patient centricity, for being patient-centered. But you are taking it further. You're really having your faculty be patient-centered, that the human is, looking at the human as a whole is very important to you. In the same way as you're looking at the curriculum as a whole, you're actually helping people to look beyond the complexity and actually see the core of what the meaning of the work. And I think using pictures to do it is just a wonderful thing. And colors. And I understand you're actually trying to do music. How is that? Tell me about that.
Well, we have many multiple views of how you can look at the curriculum in this tool that we've developed. But there are many. So I showed Penny this one that it's basically a spreadsheet, and she looked at it and she looked at it, and I had color coded, and she said, you know, that looks like music. And I said, okay, let's put this to music. And so we've now put together an animation with music, and the idea is that we will engage faculty, both their vision, hearing, and actually engage them in a game where they each get a color and stand up when their color is played. And the idea is to see if by really engaging all the senses gives people new insight into the data that they're looking at.
So I understand you've got a little demo of that. Yeah.
This is hot off the press. We have just finished it, so if it's you know, a little rough at the edges, I'm hoping you'll bear with us.
Maybe, Penny, you can, while she's looking,
Sure.
tell us, what's the overview?
Well, the overview is the music, the sound,
Yeah.
just brings in another dimension to the process. And we just think that being able to engage all of the senses and the timing of music will help people look at it.
So explain to us what's going on here.
So here you have a series, so this says compassion and ethics, and down here is the list of our institutional values, and across the top are the learning outcomes. And so we've mapped which learning outcome maps to which value, and so then when it's playing as a musical score. And so what you get a sense of is it's just giving you one more way to access the same information.
So why are they ringing at the same time?
So when you've got column 1 means all the things that just rang in this column, they all play together. And this column is representing respect. And you can see that this one that just played is quality of care.
Wow. This is marvelous.
Thank you.
Please keep going. We need to use the arts to help us be more human, especially in these areas that have got so clinical and so dry. We've lost track of our humanity. So I just want to thank you for doing what you've been doing and keep up the work. And I hope that you'll really be able to make tremendous progress bringing us to health.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mei Lin. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.